In the hot desert sun of 2003, giant flatbed trucks backed up to a quiet fence. On the back of those heavy trucks sat long rows of smooth silver cars. They looked like sleek spaceship ships built for a bright future. Workers did not unload them to put them in a showroom for buyers. They unloaded them to smash them into tiny bits. That dark day was the final end of the EV1. 7 years earlier, the story started with high hopes and bold dreams. Dedicated engineers at General Motors wanted to build something the world had never seen before. They wanted a car that ran on clean power from a wall plug instead of smelly fuel from a pump. The project felt like a giant leap forward for humankind. Inside quiet design rooms, workers believed they were changing history forever. When the EV1 hit the road, driver after driver fell deeply in love. It was fast and stepped off the line without making a single sound. You did not hear a loud engine roar or smell dirty black smoke. You just pressed your foot down and flew forward like a ghost in the night. The people who leased these cars did not treat them like plain metal. They loved them like family. Behind locked boardroom doors, another fight was taking shape. High leaders inside General Motors looked at the shiny electric car with deep worry. They did not see a miracle on wheels. They saw a giant threat to their main source of wealth. For almost 100 years, the company made its money selling cars powered by gas. A real shift meant changing everything they knew and trusted. The spark for the electric car had come from state leaders in California. The official group known as CARB set down a tough rule for big automakers. If a company wanted to sell cars in the state, a small part of those sales had to produce zero pollution. CARB wanted to clean the dirty air hanging over big cities. The goal was simple, clear, and strict for all to see. This new law forced big auto leaders to take action fast. General Motors built the EV1 to show they could meet the strict state rules. They poured huge sums of cash into testing battery cells and making light body frames. The car proved that clean electric transport was not just a wild dream. It was real, and it was running down the highway every single day. Building the car was a hard mountain to climb for the factory teams. Battery power back then was heavy and took a long time to charge up. Workers spent endless hours in labs trying to make the car go farther on one charge. Every extra mile gained was a tough victory won through trial and error. The team fought through tough nights to prove all the doubters wrong. The lucky drivers who got keys to the car were filled with pure joy. They charged their vehicles in home garages while they slept at night. They never had to pull into a gas station again or pay for messy oil changes. A tight group of drivers grew up around the car. They waved to each other on the road and gathered at parks to share their excitement. While drivers celebrated, the top leaders felt a growing panic. When analyzing corporate logic behind destruction, framing the choice reveals deep fear. Top bosses looked at the finance books and saw high costs everywhere. Each car cost a lot of money to make, but could only be leased for a small monthly fee. The numbers did not match what traditional leaders wanted to see on paper. The true fear went much deeper than short-term manufacturing costs. Traditional cars bring in steady money for years after they leave the lot. They need constant oil changes, new belts, spark plugs, and complex engine fixes. An electric car has very few moving parts to break down over time. If everyone drove an electric car, dealer repair shops would stand empty and quiet. This simple fact put the main business model in grave danger. General Motors realized that if the EV1 succeeded, it might kill their own gas car empire. The company was locked in a strange fight against its own best idea. Selling more electric cars meant shrinking the heavy profits made from truck and gas car sales. The leaders felt trapped by their own clever creation. To break free from this trap, the automaker decided to attack the clean air rule itself. They joined forces with rival car companies and oil industry groups. Together, they pushed hard against CARB to roll back the tough mandates. They claimed that the technology was not ready and that ordinary buyers did not want electric vehicles in their lives. The legal fight raged in courtrooms and public halls for years. Big companies spent millions on legal teams to break the state rule down piece by piece. Eventually, state leaders gave in to the heavy pressure and weakened the mandate. Automakers were no longer forced to build and sell thousands of zero-emission cars to stay in business. With the government rule gone, top leaders had their path clear for their ultimate move. They no longer had a legal reason to keep the electric program alive. The corporate mandate shifted from making the car work to closing the project down completely. The dream that started with bold hope was suddenly marked for death behind closed corporate doors. General Motors made the stark choice to execute a full recall on every single EV1. Because the cars were only offered through leases, the company still owned every frame. Drivers were told they had to return their beloved vehicles when their leases ran out. The decision came like a cold blow to people who had loved the cars for years. Drivers begged the company to let them buy the vehicles outright. They wrote passionate letters and showed up at company offices holding cash in their hands. Some offered thousands of dollars to keep their silver cars in their own driveways. They promised to take full care of the cars themselves without any help or spare parts from the factory. The company refused every single offer from the public. Corporate leaders feared that if drivers kept the cars, liability issues and spare part demands would drag on forever. They did not want a living fleet of electric cars proving that clean transport worked. They wanted every single trace of the project wiped away from public view. Protesters gathered outside parking lots to stand guard over the remaining cars. They held quiet candlelight vigils in the dark, holding signs that begged for mercy for the sleek vehicles. Some brave drivers even chained themselves to fence gates to stop tow trucks from entering. But the corporate machine moved forward without stopping for human tears. One by one, the quiet silver cars were loaded onto heavy flatbed trucks. They were hauled away from neighborhood driveways under the dim morning light. The drivers watched from their porches with heavy hearts as their favorite cars disappeared down the road. A sense of loss and betrayal settled deep over the community of early believers. The flatbed trucks drove far out into the dry Arizona desert. There, in a quiet scrapyard, long rows of pristine silver vehicles sat waiting under the blazing sun. Heavy machinery with giant steel arms stood ready to perform the final task. The order was clear and final: crush every single vehicle until nothing remained. The heavy jaws of the crusher came down with terrible force. Smooth aluminum frames bent and snapped under the weight. Glass shattered into thousands of tiny sparkles across the dirt ground. High-tech battery packs and custom parts were smashed into twisted junk. A project that cost hundreds of millions was reduced to flattened piles of metal. The company claimed the destruction was necessary for safety and legal protection. They said they could not support parts for a car they no longer manufactured. But to the public, the sight of brand-new cars crushed in the desert looked like a cold act of war against innovation. The image shocked observers around the world. By crushing the EV1 in 2003, General Motors thought they had buried the electric dream for good. They turned their full focus back to selling giant gas-guzzling trucks and traditional cars. For a few short years, profits were high, and leadership felt their choice was proven right. But the world outside was quietly changing direction. The destruction created an open void in the auto industry. Young engineers and bold investors saw what happened and felt a spark of anger and purpose. They realized that people truly wanted electric cars, even if old companies refused to build them. Within a few short years, new companies stepped up to fill the empty space left behind. Decades later, the market shifted heavily toward electric vehicles across the entire globe. General Motors eventually realized that by killing their own early lead, they had given up a massive head start. The car company had to spend billions of dollars trying to rebuild what they had already mastered and thrown away in the sand. The story of the EV1 stands as a stark warning about short-term thinking. A giant company had built the future, got scared of what it meant, and chose to smash it to pieces. But good ideas do not die in the desert sand. They wait in the dark until someone else picks them up and carries them across the finish line.